Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Safety Systems. If you're traveling this holiday season and your home is filled with gifts and boxes and presents, protect all that stuff with brand new security systems. You can get doorbell camera, you get the great security system, and nobody offers you a better contract. All these national people put flyers in my mailbox constantly. Well, none of them have a good contract like Safety Systems. Go local. Go Safety Systems. VFL JJ Surlis and his team do a great job. They were out at my house this week doing a great job. Safety Systems. All right, take a look here. I thought this was interesting. Just the overall stats. You compare Hendon Hooker first year, 2021, to Joe Milton this past year, identical. The offense, to me, was much smoother that first year under Hendon Hooker. Not last year, but the first year. I thought it was smoother than it looked this year. Mm-hmm. But in terms of those numbers, I was rather shocked that they are almost identical. I wouldn't have guessed that. So I thought that was interesting. But let's take a look at this next. Let's deep dive into this. What you got here, Josh Heupel's passing stats, his team passing stats, since he's been running the Veer and Shoots. You got 3 years as head coach at Tennessee, 3 years as head coach at UCF, including 1 year with 10 games there in COVID, and then 2 years as an offensive coordinator at Missouri. The orange is highlight for worst. Last year was the worst yards per attempt he's ever had, 7.7 yards per attempt. Worst touchdown pass number, 21, only 21. Yards per game down to 250.9, and I think it all traces to this. And Kevin, I know you've talked about this as well. 30-plus passes last year, you only had 18. That's the lowest he's ever had. They had 40 the year before. Mm-hmm. The 30-yard passes cranks up your yards per game. It adds to touchdowns. It adds to yards per attempt. I think you can sum up. I mean, we've seen numbers where when they don't run, the thing falls apart. This past year, I think it goes back to that deep ball passing was out. And the irony being, you spent the entire offseason telling me, everybody in the world talking about Joe Milton can throw it 100 miles. Doesn't matter if you can't complete it, whether that's on him or receivers with the dropsies or not getting open. To me, you can sum up what happened this year. Deep balls went away. Put the kibosh on the offense. Am I oversimplifying it? Jimmy Himes, feel free.
No, I think that's a huge factor. When I saw this presented as a question, I did some research and found other factors that I thought were very important as well. I can't argue with that. That was a big part of why, because mine was you average 14.6 points fewer per game. But that relates to what you're saying.
Right.
So I agreed that was a big part of that, and your inability to complete them. I thought there were times Tennessee was so leery of Milton's accuracy that they just started throwing these flanker screens in the game because he's not going to complete a slant or a deep ball. So which relegated themselves to averaging the fewest yards per, was it attempt or per completion?
Per attempt, yeah.
So you threw a lot more of those than you did with him, I think, than you did with Hooker.
I need to go back and look at this, but you compare 2 years ago to last year in terms of just end of half stuff. At the end of half, they would always take a shot with Hendon Hooker, and with Milton, it seemed like
there was a lot more hesitation.
Yes, it's like let's be careful here. If we get a big play in the run game, then we'll take a shot here. Your thoughts? Is that the reason, or is that oversimplification? Is there something else that's bigger?
I think that's the biggest reason, because also if you can be explosive, hit big plays early, get up early in where you are, like you've shown the 11-plus stat when trailing. But if Tennessee could flip that, was in complete control of what it was doing against an opponent. Big plays early. We saw it in 2022. Jalen Hyatt's maybe an exception of how good they could be, but that's why Kevin mentioned earlier, go get somebody that can be a playmaker at wide receiver because it changes the offense if you compare that with Nico.
Watched the Giants beat my Patriots last week, and you think about Jalen Hyatt. Last year I was thinking, well, he's a product of the system. He made a play against the Patriots defensive back J.C. Jackson last week where he just gave him a dead leg and a head shake. Just wiggled right by him. And last year, granted, most of it was in this offense. He's just racing by people. But, yeah, you lost a really talented guy in Jalen Hyatt. And Cedric Tillman was a talented guy as well. So when we're talking about this deep ball, it's not all Joe Milton. It was guys not getting open. It was guys with some drops. And it was Joe Milton. Kevin, do you agree, or is that oversimplified?
No, I agree completely. And the thing that I'll add to it is when you're looking at the comparison between Joe Milton 23, Hendon Hooker in 21, the difference is Ced Tillman. Ced Tillman caught 64 balls in 21 for over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. We didn't have anybody like that at receiver this season. So,
Good point.
I know we can talk about Joe and throwing a bunch of bubble screen. who are you throwing the football to? You know what I mean? Like, who's creating deep, explosive plays? Who's a mismatch in our favor? We didn't have anybody like that in our passing game. So, to me, I think that's what needs to change for us to be who we want to become, and be explosive, successful moving forward.
To play off of that, I went into this season, I didn't think Joe Milton would be Hendon Hooker. Going into I just did not see that. Where I was wrong, though, was I thought someone out of Ramel Keaton, Squirrel White, Brew McCoy, Dante Thornton would replace the Hyatts and the Tillmans. You didn't have anybody at that level. Vince, are we all wet? Are we wrong on this, or does everybody agree that this is this deep ball thing being gone was the whole crux of it?
It is. It's the deal. It is. It's the goods. It's why they were in that situation, because you think it's not just being able to score easy buckets, like Mark was talking about, easy baskets for the basketball team. Sometimes you got to get those easy scores and the juice that you get from it, and it impacts you, demoralizes the opponents.
Crowd gets into it or shuts up if you do it on the road.
Absolutely. They just don't have it. I mean, look at the impact it had on the LSU game last year, and it's just on and on. So they didn't have that. The numbers being similar, I mean, a lot of those bubble screens led to the completion percentage being the same, and the yards. They didn't have the yards after catch, too, that they did a year ago, and you expected to get from this group this year.
Right. John, there was another one that I thought was huge, too. Touchdowns in the red zone.
Yeah.
They dropped from 79% to 49%. That is huge.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big reason also this offense sputtered at times.
Yep. Very good. All right. Keep clicking for us. Tampa still way in the lead. Everybody wants to go to Tampa. Jacksonville second, then Nashville. Yeah, Mr. Tampa. Tampa, then Jacksonville, then Nashville, then Charlotte. All right, here's what we're going to talk about next. Will the SEC get hung out to dry and snubbed from the college football playoff? Come on back on the Sports Source.